Chapter 26. Boss? It was well into the evening when Ryan heard the crunch of tires on gravel. He was supposed to be resting, but found himself entirely unable to sleep, instead laying on his cot, staring at the ceiling, his mind still on edge, playing over the escape and the events of the previous night. The pain wasn't helping either. He heard a car door close and soft footsteps approaching. He sat up and reached out for his pistol, only to remember it had been taken from him, and he was more or less defenseless. He grabbed one of the methoxyflurane inhalers he still hadn't used and was about to throw it at Jeff when the door to the lumberyard warehouse creaked open. Through the ajar door to the annex where he and the crew were sleeping, he could make out the silhouetted figure of a woman and hesitated. Lindsay stuck her head through the door and Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. "Lindsay, you scared the hell out of me. You're okay?" She looked exhausted, smeared with blood that, judging from the lack of visible injuries, wasn't hers, but still she grinned at him. "Of course. Everyone's okay here?" "Somewhat miraculously, yeah." He smirked. "Can't sleep?" she asked, nodding towards the other cots where the crew were in various states of sleep. Michael lightly tossing, Gavin curled in a ball on his side, Jack and Jeff contentedly snoring on their backs, and Jeremy flopped on his stomach, fingertips brushing the ground. Ryan scoffed, resting back on his elbows, and raised an eyebrow. "Could you?" He cringed a little at how that came out, sounding a little more self-pitying than he would have liked, and quickly added, "I mean, with the noise that these two are making?" He jerked his thumb towards Jack and Jeff, who had started to harmonize. Lindsay laughed. "Hey, assholes! Wake up!" she yelled, clapping her hands a few times. Gavin and Jeremy woke with a start. Gavin nearly twitched himself off his cot. Jack just stretched out and opened his eyes. Michael groaned and covered his ears with his hands. 5 more minutes, he whined. Jeff didn't even stir slightly, still completely out cold. Lindsay went over and sat on his cot, which creaked under their combined weight. "Jeff? Jeff?" She poked him a few times before he finally started to wake up. Jeff rubbed his face with the back of his hand and blearily opened his eyes. "Lindsay?" "Hey, Jeff. What time is it?" Lindsay stood up and pretended to check a watch she didn't have. "About 1:30. "God, don't say a.m. "A.m. Jeff groaned and laid back down, pulling the blanket over his head. "Well, it's good to see you're safe and well too, Jeff," Lindsay teased. Jeff sat upright with a start, throwing the blanket off himself, coming back to his senses. "Shit! What happened? Are Matt and Traco okay? How'd you get back here?" Lindsay shrugged. "Well, the short version. Matt and Trevor are fine. Well, Matt got shot, but it's just a graze. Nothing too serious. They ran into some trouble after the cops shot their tires out, but I was able to pick them up and we managed to get back to the safe house you were using before the siege without any cops following us." "How the fuck did you manage that? I mean, you were unarmed," Jeff asked incredulously. "Please, Jeff, let me at least retain something of an air of mystery," she replied with a sly grin. "Whatever you say, boss," Jeff mumbled. "Good job with the guys back there. Quick thinking." Michael stood up and pulled her down onto his cot, hugging her. He whispered something in her ear affectionately. Whoa. Back up a sec." "Boss?" Ryan asked, intrigued but not completely surprised. Jeff cleared his throat. Lindsay? Would you like to, want to share with the crew what you've been doing for the past few weeks?" Lindsay blushed a little. "Well, I've been taking over your responsibilities with the Fake AH crew, Jeff." "You run the crew," Jeff affirmed, grinning. "Since we found out about the randoms and all this shit that's been happening behind our backs and under our noses. As soon as I knew Lindsay was clean, I promoted her. She's been quietly running the crew and all the operations for weeks. And doing a fantastic job, I might add." "Suck up," Michael teased. "Awesome. So we don't have to take Jeff's shit anymore?" Jack asked with a smirk. Jeff scoffed. "Oh no. You assholes still have to report to me, but for all official purposes, Lindsay's in charge." "So you're like the boss without the responsibilities of being the boss?" Gavin asked. "Exactly," Jeff confirmed with a lopsided grin. Jack laughed. "That sounds like it suits you perfectly." Wait a minute. That means, Michael interrupted. Hey, everyone, I'm banging my boss. It was met with groans and giggles from the crew. Does that mean you've been heading up the internal investigations? Jeremy asked eagerly. Lindsay nodded. Mm-hmm. So everyone's clean? Yep, Lindsay confirmed with a smile. Caleb and Caden moved on following the investigations, but they weren't involved. It was more of a wake-up call for them that we're not exactly in a safe business. It's probably for the best. Everyone who's left is clean as a whistle, as far as we can tell. Good, Jeff huffed. That means we don't have to worry about any more leaks. From now on, the only way anyone leaves the fake AH crew is in a fucking body bag. Wait, why are we just finding out about this now? Ryan asked skeptically. Oh, well, I didn't want to give away what I was working on, Jeff explained vaguely. Which is? Well, can I just say, new job sucks. Gonna be a lot of meetings, Jeff sighed. I'm working on pulling together an alliance. Funhouse are the first of many to come. Yesterday was kinda like their interview. Did a fucking excellent job, too. Passed that trial with flying colors. The crew stared back with wide eyes as Jeff continued. I've been reviewing the up-and-comers who have similar or complementary skills and values as us. I'm hoping now that Lil J's video idea will help with the recruiting. Huh, Jack said after a beat, nodding. That's actually a pretty great idea. A lot to take on, though. Sure you're up to it? Too fucking late now, Jeff smirked and shrugged. Gavin had been sitting in silence, staring out at nothing in particular, when suddenly he sat up and turned to Ryan with an excited grin. Oh yeah, Ryan, I want to meet your cat. Ryan, startled by the sudden change of subject, was about to say, sure, before he realized he'd never mentioned his pets in front of the main crew. Wait, how do you know I have a cat? Gavin looked a little embarrassed. You were all loopy at the hospital and said you had a cat named Violet. Huh. Okay then. I mean, I do. I don't remember that, he confessed. Yeah, and Lindsay said it was true, Gavin explained. Ryan looked up at Lindsay with a sly smirk. You didn't tell them about our shopping weekends too, did you? Lindsay, the improv enthusiast she was, ran with his suggestion. Well, I didn't, but I think you might have just given that away. Gavin chortled. I can't even imagine you going shopping, Ryan. Lindsay shrugged. What can I say, Gavin? The man's got an eye for style, even if he can't apply it to himself. Hey, Ryan snapped playfully. There's nothing wrong with the way I dress. My clothes are fine, even if I do seem to be running out of good t-shirts lately. Did you ever have a good t-shirt? Lindsay asked, only half joking. Why does everyone hate the way I dress? Ryan's a right chav sometimes, yeah? Gavin said with a grin. Michael shook his head. I'm not even sure what you just said, but I feel like that might have been an insult. Just you wait till my legs work again, Gavin. I'm gonna beat the English out of you. Ryan was playing, but it still managed to come out kind of threatening. Gavin made a sort of snorting noise in his throat and giggled. The rest of the crew laughed. Oh shit, I nearly forgot. Ryan, I brought you something. Lindsay looked more serious now. He's in the trunk. Ryan's grin melted away and the darkness was back in his eyes as his head snapped towards Jeff. Jeff sneered, nodding. I'll give you a hand with him, if you want it. Ryan nodded solemnly, something close to fear snaking its way into his brain. He put it down to anticipation and pushed it out. Jack, Michael, Jeremy, and Gavin went out to the car with Lindsay to deal with Shadles. A few minutes later, Lindsay returned to the annex with a lightweight foldable wheelchair and a set of crutches. I thought about how useless you were back in the hospital, so I got you these for you to use until you heal up. Hey, wow. Thanks, Lindsay. He meant it genuinely, but it sounded a little sarcastic nonetheless. Lindsay wasn't offended. She'd come to expect that kind of response, especially considering how she'd phrased it so teasingly. No one questioned how she was able to obtain them at such short notice, or so late at night, but Ryan was thankful she'd thought ahead. She always thought of everything. She was going to do great running the crew. Hell, she already was. Ryan felt that guilt creeping back. If she hadn't been so capable, if something had happened to her, Michael would probably have killed him. Ryan couldn't help but think that if something had happened to Lindsay, he probably would have let him. Jeff watched on as Lindsay helped Ryan carefully get himself into the wheelchair. He was still wearing the teal-green scrubs Sean had given him back at the hospital, so Lindsay retrieved a shirt from the locker they kept spare clothes and other supplies in. It was one of Jeff's, slate gray with a seemingly meaningless geometric pattern on it. Knowing Jeff was probably some secret code or obscure reference. Ryan took it gratefully and changed, careful not to disturb the stitches and bandages holding his arms and torso together, thankful the neck was stretched out from years of wear and wasn't going to rub over the covered brand. Jeff caught sight of the bruising, dark reds and purples up and down his ribs, tinging green and yellow at the edges. He couldn't fathom how much that must have hurt, although he could sympathize with the bullet in the leg. "Are you going to be okay to do this, Ryan?" Jeff asked finally. Ryan nodded, eyes already cold. "I need to do this." Jeff sighed, scratching his head. "That's what I'm worried about." "Jeff, please let me do this." There was a kind of desperation there, just beneath the surface. It still worried Jeff. Jack stuck his head in the door to the annex. "Ready when you are." Jeff looked at Ryan as if to say, "It's your call." Ryan nodded. "Ready."